This was William, and there was a John, Martha, Sarah, George, James, Peter, Mary Ann, Matilda, Walker, Benjamin, Samuel, Young, and Cordelia. Two of John's children were named for notable people that lived near the Diamond family. First, George Stoneham, my great-grandfather, and several other people's great-grandfather here, was named for George Stoneham. He was a cotton planter who had relocated to Connecticut County and operated a keelboat with his brother from Brooklyn to Pensacola. Stoneham and his four nephews that he had become guardian for after his brother and wife died of probably yellow fever, took his many slaves and his nephews, and they moved to Grimes County, Texas, where he was a successful cotton planter, controlled 115 slaves, and an estate valued at $150,000. This was probably 1850. A lot of money. Another child, Walker Anderson Diamond, was named for Walker Anderson. Surprise. A neighbor that was a lawyer. He was appointed a U.S. attorney for West Florida and prosecuted Jonathan Walker. Anybody ever heard of Jonathan Walker? Mr. Smith?
There's a whiskey. Johnny Walker.
Could be. I don't think this was it. He was a slave stealer. All right? 1844, Jonathan Walker attempted to take 7 slaves to the Bahamas. He was caught off of Florida and returned to stand trial in Pensacola. And Walker Anderson, who was a next door neighbor practically of our John, over around Bluff Springs, what they call it, the interior of District 1, was the lawyer. He went on to be in the Supreme Court of Florida, Walker Anderson did. So I'm saying that John got to know people and liked to rub elbows with them. That's my own private opinion. The first 7 children were born in Alabama, and the last 7 were born in Escambia County and San Rosa County, Florida. By 1850, the family is listed on the federal census in Escambia County, and it was called the interior of District 1. This was probably in the Bluff Springs area. Here he operated a water mill and a commissary. In 1852, the voting precinct number 4 was at the home of John, and the precinct inspectors were Walter Medlock and another name that folks might know, Stephen Gaylor. This election was held to select a Major General, 1st Division, Florida Militia, to fill a vacancy occasioned by the resignation of Major General John Milton. And again in 1853, the Pensacola Gazette reported an election notice for state and local officials. And again, the voting precinct was at the house of John Diamond, and the inspectors were William Leatherwood, William Bowman, and Walter Medlock. Sometime before the Civil War, John and family moved across the river to the Coon Hill area, where they were listed on the 1860 Santa Rosa County census. Here he established a sawmill and a commissary. To secure supplies for the commissary, such as coffee, sugar, flour, and other necessities, would require a trip to Pensacola. The trip would take 6 to 7 days traveling in a wagon drawn by oxen. The first night was spent in the Pine Barren area, and the second night was near Gonzales, or Cantonment. The third day, they would gather supplies that had been brought to Pensacola on ships. And then they'd do it all again, coming back north. When the Confederates occupying Pensacola evacuated the city, they retreated along the river where they burned everything that could be of use to the Federals. John's sawmill was almost certainly destroyed. You know, a few months ago, Dorothy and Marshall and I did the Ghost Walk down to Milton. I didn't know this, but in around March 11th of 1862, the Confederates was going to evacuate out of Pensacola. Just leave them to what was there. So they went to Milton, started down around Holly, came up the river, up the bay, burning all the sawmills. Burned millions and millions of board feet of lumber. One of the colonels that was in charge of having to do this had to order his own sawmill being burned down. I thought that was kind of nice. John and 5 of his boys served with the Confederacy. John the father served in the Home Guard and guarded a railroad trestle in Escambia County, Florida. I don't think there was any track, it was just a trestle. William, the oldest son, was a 5th sergeant in Company D of the 15th Confederate Cavalry. John also served in the same unit. James, George, and Peter served in the Home Guards. In 1867, William, John, and George, my grandfather, great-grandfather, signed a loyalty oath in order to vote. James and Peter did not have to sign this because they were not of legal age. Peter said that one of his jobs was taking salt up to near Claiborne, Alabama during the Civil War. On a wagon, I guess. And in 1871, Mary Ann, John's first wife, died, and she was buried at Coon Hill Cemetery. In June of 1873, John married Matilda Johnson. We believe she was probably Mary Ann's cousin. She passed away in November of 1888, and she is also buried at Coon Hill. John met and married for the 3rd time, about a year after he got rid of, well, the other one died. Her name was Eliza Wells Ezel. She was the mother of Marietta Ezel that married John's son Peter. So it kind of kept it all in the family. Eliza was the mother of at least 11 children from a previous marriage. Yeah. She died in 1924 and is buried at Core Cemetery. And at the age of 94, John was injured in a fall from his large white horse, probably broke a hip, and died a few days later. He was a member of the church at Coon Hill, and he is also buried at Coon Hill.